Well, good evening and welcome to a very special Instagram Live fireside chat. I am so thrilled to be leading this conversation tonight. This is the second conversation amongst our three-part series about navigating eating disorder recovery during the holiday season. We are so thrilled that last week we had a conversation around navigating Lent, tonight a conversation around navigating Passover, and next week, navigating recovery during Ramadan. So tonight's conversation will be about, how to navigate eating disorder recovery during Passover. This is something that's very important to me. This is something that falls very close to my heart. So really, really, really thrilled that we can have this conversation, and I am so excited to have the amazing Barbara join us. I think she just signed on, so I'll wait for her to request to join, and we will go from there. So let me see if I can get her to come on. Let's see. Hold on one moment for me, and hopefully we can get her on. There we go. Never know with me and technology. It's hit or miss. Hi!
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm sitting on a table.
I love that. You just finished up with class, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, I am so excited that you are able to join.
Same. This is going to be so great. Sorry, people are just leaving. So I'm like, okay, bye, friends.
Yeah, you're like, gotta go. I have to do something.
Yeah, I was like, I'm supposed to be on a video right now.
Amazing. Well, I so appreciate you being able to do this and having a conversation. And as I was sharing just a few moments ago, this is actually our second conversation in a three-part series about navigating eating disorder recovery during the holiday season. This is such a huge holiday season, right? With Lent and Easter and Passover and Ramadan. So really, really excited to have this special talk. And when we were talking about navigating Passover, we at the Alliance are a huge fan of yours, and you've always just posted just so beautifully and shared so beautifully about Judaism and eating disorders and sobriety and all of the things. So I'm excited to just get started. So I think Barbara would love for you to share just a little bit about you and who you are and all the things.
Yeah, totally. I'm so excited. This is so great. I've heard, Johanna and I have like very intense amounts of mutual friends. So I'm really excited. My name is Barbara. I am 26. I'm currently in school at DePaul University in Chicago. I literally just finished class. So I'm literally in a classroom. But yeah, I have been in recovery for a long time now, and Judaism is something that I hold really, really close to my heart. I lived in Israel for quite a few years, and I've kind of carved out my own little niche corner of the internet about Judaism and eating disorder recovery and sobriety, and it's been a really amazing experience to connect with so many people. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Awesome. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to have this conversation and that you create spaces for individuals to have these conversations. I know that over the many years that I've, been at the Alliance and run the Alliance, I've always spent a significant amount of time about talking about, eating disorders within the Jewish community. And, as, someone who is a child of a Holocaust survivor and very aware of transgenerational trauma and how, Judaism has played into my eating disorder and my recovery and all of the things, just really, really appreciate just having this time and space. So, I think I really want to start off the conversation by talking about, eating disorders can be so sneaky. They can be like sneaky little bastards, and it can take any opportunity to really sort of lean into using behaviors. So I'm just wondering, maybe through your experience or through, being so supportive of so many people like within our community and in recovery, how have you experienced or seen disordered eating or eating disorders come up during Passover? Because we always think about, Yom Kippur or the fasting holidays, of course, but we don't think about Passover much.
Yeah, I think, Passover is a really interesting one because it's not technically fasting and it's a longer holiday. And I think it's a tricky one. I personally have always kept Passover, even like through recovery and through all sorts of things. And that's just like between me and my rabbis and my treatment team. Um, but I think there's a lot of opportunity within Passover for restricting to kind of be like, well, I can't do this, so I also can't do this. Like my brain loved to do that. Or you keep
Mhm.
Passover for the 8 days, and on day 9, you're like, well, why would I break it? Like,
Yep.
what's the point of that? And I think that's kind of where it gets tricky because, you have people, at least myself, whose brains get very rigid. And so you do something for
Mhm.
8 days, and all of a sudden you're like, well, why? What am I supposed to do on day 9?
Yep.
And I think that's where I see it pop up the most for people I know and for myself is like the restarting after.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think, when especially when you've worked so hard to get to a place where, all foods fit and you don't abstain from anything. And then all of a sudden, and, there's reason why, we abstain from grains um, and it can also be that like almost, I don't want to say that like re-triggering or like that trigger pull of like, okay, well, I just, now I'm not having these five types of grains, like, and unless, you're Sephardic like I am, and then it's like, woo, you get like rice and beans and all the good things. Um, but it just sort of to me, and this actually very much happened to me, is that it was the gateway almost back into it of like, I'm going to cut this out. And then, of course, just like you said, it was one of those things where I started, perseverating around, okay, now that I did this, like, what else can go into this? And it was like, again, my eating disorder using the most, spiritual and best parts of me, like, and it almost weaponized it for me. I don't know if like you've experienced that, like maybe in other holidays or other experiences, like within Judaism.
I think for sure. I mean, I think there's something to be said about, making it to that place where like you can all foods fit and like you specifically don't restrict things unless there's like allergies or whatever. Like I keep kosher 365 days of the year. So like there's also restrictions around that.
Mhm.
But I do think that Passover adds an extra layer of kind of this like cutting out very specific groups. Also, I'm very jealous that you're Sephardi. That would make my life so much easier. And I think there's kind of that potential for being like, well, now it's like mandated that I cut these things out. So like now I
Yes.
have to.
Yes.
So I definitely can see that.
Yeah, and I think also something that I also wanted to bring up, because we talk so much about, in eating disorder recovery, like navigating that Thanksgiving meal, right? Where it's like everyone comes together, there's so much food, there's so much, and like I feel like saying that that's like your typical Shabbat, like every Friday night, like
Yeah.
it's just like a 3 hour meal and there's like 16 courses, but I know that even if you're, not in the Orthodox community or conservative, like Passover is a time where you come together with your family, with your friends, and you have big meals. And it is, I mean, and even and I don't know if you're comfortable talking about this, but even for someone who's sober as well, where it is like said that you will have lots of wine that night too. And so I guess I would love to know more about how have you navigated that experience of like the big meals, whether it's on Passover or Shabbat or whatever holiday it is, but specifically around the Passover Seder, where it's a lot of food and a lot of alcohol.
It's so funny. I had written something for an online like sober blog at one point about like being Jewish and sober. And I actually just contributed to an article for them about like sitting at a Passover Seder and not drinking because there's at least 4 cups of wine going around at a Passover Seder for everyone. Um, and that holds like a very dear place in my heart because over 4.5 years ago now, like that was like that's what created my like relapse in sobriety. And looking back, like that's such a monumental moment. And like my first Seder after that a year later was like such a monumental moment in my recovery to be like, I can make it through a Passover Seder. Like Passover is about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always easy to find in it when you're sitting there dealing with food or alcohol or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, this holiday is about our freedom and our becoming a nation. And when it comes to like the big meal thing, they can be so anxiety provoking. You know, that's why everyone does a live at Thanksgiving. That's why every Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
every recovery account, every treatment center ever is like, get ready. Like, Thanksgiving is coming. And I think it's the same thing with Passover. And I think, you know, families are complicated. Everyone's family is different. I think the rules around it are complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just a lot of, I found a lot of power in being able to like step away from the table. I found a lot of comfort in like having friends to reach out to.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I wouldn't use my phone on like Seder nights, like it would still be like with friends or with other people, like kind of having those like almost like those escape routes that give you that moment to be like, everything is actually okay. Most likely. Like, everything is most likely okay. And like really leaning into what the holiday is about.
I love that. I love that. And I definitely, I think it was yesterday, or the day before, you did a Passover post, and, you said,
Yeah.
you actually specifically said, Passover is about freedom, our freedom from Egypt, the pharaohs, like being slaves, and all of that. And I think back to how many people, that are probably like tuning into this live or that will watch it after, that are in the midst of their eating disorder. And for them, life beyond an eating disorder is just that. It is freedom. And I also want to be very, very just aware of the fact that there's a lot of people right now that are very anxious about tomorrow night. And I also want to hold space for, there's a lot of individuals that are going to be celebrating like Easter on Sunday, that are going to, go out to Easter brunch or Easter dinner, and are in that same space. So it doesn't necessarily only apply to Judaism or the Catholicism or Christianity, or the big meals at night after fasting all day for Ramadan. Like, so there's a lot of focus on these meals. And I don't know about your experience, but for me, like, dieting always came up. And I don't necessarily mean like specifically like I'm on a diet. I know that for me and my family, food is a love language. It is the love language, right? And it's like, eat, eat, eat. And we'll be the first to tell you when you get a little bit to whatever, like, so it's this, like, we will feed you, and we are going to make you feel like shit about the way that you look at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, I guess it's, for people that are watching, how do you like navigate that part of the meal, right? Where the conversation comes up, if it were to come up, about like diet talk, about like, conversations about talking about people's bodies, and oftentimes, fat phobia, weight stigma, all of that. Like, do you have any suggestions on how to navigate that for people that are tuning in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously depends on like family dynamics. At this point in my life, when people that I consider myself close to are saying things, I'm like, or we could not talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, I am like overly direct about it. Like, my sister literally the other day started saying something, and I was like, do you want to try that one again? And she was like, I can't say this stuff around you. And I was like, no, you can't. Try again. Like, I am overly direct about it, which I also understand is not necessarily okay for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in situations where you're like, my family's not in a place for me to do that. I'm not in a place to do that. And it's also not your job to do it.
No.
But I think in that situation, it's, if you can remove yourself from the situation, remove yourself from the situation, or just arm yourself with facts. Like, there are so many facts out there about like how often diets fail, or like the impact of like body statements on people. Like, at the end of the day, people can argue all they want, but you can't argue against facts and research, and it's all out there.
Yep.
but I do highly recommend just being like, stop saying that. It really throws people off, and then they stop their conversation because they aren't expecting it. You're like,
Yeah.
no, and they're like, what?
No, I love that. I love that. And I think that, in my former life, I was a professional ballet dancer, and I had a teacher that would say, prepare to prepare. And I would look at her and I'd be like, does that mean? And I guess now that, I'm in recovery and this is what I do and I talk about it, I very much understand of like this idea of being ready, be prepared. And again, also being very aware that like you can't account for everything because you can't control other people. As much as I like to believe I can try to do that, I can't. And, so I think, what are some of your favorite tools, getting yourself ready if it is the day before, a big holiday, whatever it is. What are some things that you tend to like to do, sort of preparing to go into the holiday?
So one, I would definitely say around Passover, like I I love Passover. It like drives people crazy. I love Passover. I just love the meaning behind it. I love the message behind it. And so I think this works for Easter too, and probably Ramadan. I'm gonna not gonna lie, I don't know much about Easter, even though I go to a Catholic university. Um, I try, but I think that when there's holidays that have meaning and have purpose, such a great thing to do, at least for me, is to like learn something new about it, focus on like the actual connection to it, so that when I'm sitting at a meal or I'm sitting in a difficult conversation, it's like a reminder of like, but there is something deeper than the meal that's happening in front of me. And I think also like if you have a community, if you have people that understand recovery, that understand where you're at, like my friends and I are always in contact. And it's a lot of like, what are you doing for the holiday? Like, how can I show up for you? Like, what do you need in this situation? And typically we have answers. Sometimes I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know how I want you to show up for me. But like, it's the fact that like there's the option there, for sure. And I would say my first couple years doing holidays in recovery and stuff, I I have a great treatment team now, but my first couple of years I had one that was like, if you are like freaking out, like call us. And like that's not everyone's reality, but like if it is your reality, like take them up on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so often we're so afraid to be a burden, or, even though people will say, please call us or
Yeah.
please reach out, but you're like, they don't really mean that. I don't want to be a pain. Listen to what Barbara just said. Reach out. That's what they're there for. That's what your floaties, like I like to call them, are there for. And and I think something that's been so beautiful is over the years is even seeing what the rabbis have said, even with like Shomer Shabbos, and like even allowing people to pick up their phones if they need that connection, if they need to get that support. And so I really love that talk to your rabbi, like let them know what's going on. And again, is we have to be aware that we need to take care of ourselves on this journey to recovery. So, um, you know, I really just wish everyone, just such a beautiful and lovely and healthy and wonderful holiday. And my biggest wish is that it's not hijacked by the eating disorder, because, you know, I love how you talked about, like holidays, whether it is Easter, Passover, whatever holiday it is that it has such big meaning. And we all connect to these holidays differently. And one of the things that, after having a lot of loss in my family over the last few years, like Passover was a holiday where we all came together. Actually, probably even more than like break the fast or anything about, like it was Passover. And to me, like I have this newfound like focus on, I want to be present because I want to be aware of the humans that are sitting around the table. Because after the last 2 years that we've had, is the one thing that we know is nothing is certain. I mean, going from having like all of us having Zoom seders around the table 2 years ago to like being in person this year, and just being very mindful. So finding like almost your values around what this holiday is and what you want to get from this holiday, I think is such a big thing. And also knowing that you are allowed to take care of yourself because your health and well-being is always the most important at the end of the day. So the last thing I wanted to ask you, Barbara, is you're such this, human that like is just so inspirational when it comes to recovery from your eating disorder and from alcohol, and using your experience to share your truth, to shed light for other people walking behind you. Um, and so with you saying that, Passover to you is about freedom, which it so is. If you could go back to yourself, 4.5 years ago, or when you were in the midst of your eating disorder, what would you say to yourself in the midst of your struggle, knowing what you know now?
Oh my gosh. That's so hard. Um, I went to every year that I lived in Israel, I went to a Seder by this family that I adore. And they always went around the table and had everyone share like what their personal like leaving Egypt was that year. And which I always thought was very cheesy.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm
it was great.
totally going to have to rip that off tomorrow night, by the way.
You should. They're incredible. And that was always their Seder question. Like, what was your personal Yetziat Mitzrayim this year? And I think if I were to speak to myself however many years ago, or even now, honestly, sometimes, like, I think it would be just like the reminder that, like, you can leave Egypt. Like, like, yeah, like there is an exit. Like, I don't know what it is all the time. And I certainly have trapped myself in more than one. But I think the idea that just like something exists outside of it is like so important. Because like I remember sitting in the midst of like, I don't know, addiction even, and being like, there is nothing past this.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. And like, that's so untrue.
I love that.
So yeah, but yeah, I highly recommend stealing the Seder question. It's a great question. They're
it's
the best.
fantastic. No, I love that. And I just, I really appreciated your answer so much. Is, one of the first therapists I ever went to go see for my eating disorder, she was a lovely human, didn't know much about eating disorders. And after I shared with her what was going on, she looked at me and she goes, I'm really happy that you're here, but I have to tell you that you're going to be struggling with your eating disorder for the rest of your life. And I remember thinking, why the hell am I here? And, it really threw me for a tailspin, and I like didn't actually reach out for help for a significant amount of time. And what I really needed to hear in that moment was that it does get better. It really does get better. So
I'm in the dark.
You're in the dark. We could still see you. You're good. You're good.
Okay, great. My lights are literally at DePaul. We're doing great.
You're all good. You're all good.
We're fine.
But yeah, so just I really again love this whole idea of that despite, what the shitty committee between your ears is saying, or, that there is, it is like your personal Egypt, that there is life beyond, that you get to live beyond your eating disorder or your substance use or your alcoholism, whatever it is that there's tomorrow. There's a minute from now. There is recovery. There is hope. So, Barbara, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and for just being the fabulous you that you are. And for everyone who's joining us tonight, we all wish you a very happy, healthy, Passover, Easter, Ramadan. And please know that the Alliance is here, whatever you all need. Please continue to join our groups. We are holding them throughout our normal groups. We're not canceling anything. So, and our entire team will be at the office tomorrow. So, meaning that we can help with referrals, but you don't have to walk this journey alone. So thank you for shedding light for so many. And I really wish you and your loved ones a very happy, healthy, and wonderful Passover. So thank you so much, Barbara, and I hope to talk to you soon again.
Yeah, bye.
Have a good night. Bye, everyone. Take care.